Good morning, one and all. How are we doing? Hope you're all fit and well. Dan Cullen just leapt through the door. There we are. Good morning, Dan. How are you doing, mate? Are you settled in a job now? I know, judging by the WhatsApp group, you were here, there, and pretty damn near everywhere. Love to hear from you. Chris Ford. Good morning, gentlemen. Soon to be damp in sunny Derbyshire. Well, I was up in not so sunny Staffordshire yesterday, which I'll get to in just a moment. But the weather was interesting. It wasn't great down at ground level, but we then went up to out of JCB's heavy products factory up to Kevin Quarry, which is a microclimate all its own. And boy, oh boy, was it challenging. Good morning to Ken Hatcher. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. He's got a bit of sunshine down in Welsh Wales. Mark Whiting has just pitched up. Morning, Mark. How are you? How good of you to join us, which means we can start the show because Mark is he's kind of our checkered flag. When he arrives, we have permission to go. Dan says, yes, I'll be travelling to Brighton later for a job with Mr. Hanley and waits. Good stuff. Yeah. Well, listen, Mr. Hanley, not a bad gig, and also Brighton. Brighton's lovely. More so when the weather's decent, but get yourself up the lanes. Yeah, for those of you that don't know Brighton, there's part of the sort of Brighton Old Town. There's the lanes, very sort of narrow streets. Looks like something out of the Dickensian period, but lots of good shops, good eateries, good pubs up there. It's where my wife's engagement ring came from, funnily enough. That's a whole other story, although I was reminded of it because the day before yesterday was my wedding anniversary. 36 years, the poor woman. Jim Turner is here as well. Morning, peeps. So let me just take you back very quickly over JCB because it was a mixed bag. I wish I could laugh about it. It was a mixed bag. So let me start with the highs. Obviously, it's JCB. We were treated like royalty. We had a nice night at the St George's Park Hotel, home of British football, home of English football, should I say. That was all fine and splendid. Lovely meal with the fine folks at JCB. That was all good and proper. Up to the heavy plant, heavy equipment plant, seeing where the excavators come from. That was all very interesting as well. I had a good mosey around there. Went up to Kevin Quarry. Well, listen, they've got a bunch of new equipment, a whole bunch, including two new big excavators. The 420X and the 520X, so basically 40 and 50 ton respectively. So the 370X is no longer their biggest. In actual fact, the 520X is the biggest machine that JCB have ever made. They also unveiled the new 715 ADT. Those of a certain vintage will remember that JCB has been in the ADT market before, back in 1988 with the JCB 712. I was actually at the launch of the 712. It took me a long while to remember it, but I was at the launch of the 712, and I'll come back to that. Hold that thought. The hydrogen backhoe loader is now a real living, breathing thing. They've got a refueling solution that has been developed by a company in Oxford, which is also partly owned by a member of the JCB family. A whole range of compactors. They've got the 3CX Sitemaster, which is their cost-effective version, which you can get for the princely sum of 55 grand, or I think it's about 207 quid a week. So if you are a burgeoning owner-operator, you've got yourself a fantastic machine, very versatile machine for not a great deal of bunts, which I think is fantastic stuff. There was compaction equipment there, which I didn't get to see, which brings me on to the downside of things. So the downside was we got to the quarry looked lovely, and then the heavens opened, so we couldn't film. And then we went out and did a bit of filming, and then the heavens opened again, so we couldn't. So I was planning to interview Georgina Williams, didn't get to do that. Was planning to film the 420X and the 520X digging, didn't get to do that. All a bit of a nightmare. And it was all a bit rushed because of the weather and delays and everything else. It was all a bit rushed. Anyway, we finished up at the quarry, and we went back to JCB's world headquarters for lunch. Splendid lunch, as you would expect, and all exactly as you'd expect. I got home last night, sat down to turn out my video of what I'd seen, or at least one of the videos of what I'd seen. I've lost my camera. I've got a horrible feeling I left it on the coach on the way between JCB and back to the hotel to pick up my car. But I cannot begin to tell you how gutted I am. Absolutely devastated. Because, listen, it's going to cost me a few quid, well, more than a few quid to replace it, which is one thing, which I could quite easily do without. But the biggest thing is, I did a whole day of filming, including I took the time out. Rather than going and touring the machines, I actually did a sort of standalone film on my relationship with the JCB ADT. I shot it all, recorded it all, and that is still on the camera on an SD, on micro SD card. So as it stands at the moment, that is currently lost. More than that, that SD card actually contained all of my additional footage from the Samoteur show over in Italy. So the walkarounds that I brought you, the ones that you've seen, great. The ones that you haven't seen, you may never. I've just had a message from JCB to say they are still looking for the camera. I mean, I can only hope that the coach driver has spotted it and has handed it in. And but as it stands at the moment, I don't know what to do. And it's made worse. It's made worse by the fact that the camera isn't really mine. Fred bought it about 18 months ago, and it's an Osmo. It's a handheld like gimbal camera. I used it right the way across Italy for the EDA study tour of Italy. I used it at ConExpo. I used it at Bauma. I've used it and used it and used it and used it, and it's brought some of the best footage we've had on this show. And now I don't have it. And as I say, Fred bought it, and basically he drives the big camera, the big Canon camera, and I drive the little one. And I've lost the little one, which actually belongs to him. Now, I mean, he's been fairly chill about it because he's just bought himself. I've got the Osmo 3. He's just bought himself the Osmo 4. And if I can't get the my current one back, if it is really lost, I'm probably going to have to go and get myself an Osmo 4. Not the end of the world. I mean, an upgrade is not that bad a thing. But it's the lost information. As I say, I mean, I filmed speeches yesterday and the day before. I filmed literally the unveiling of the 420X and the 520X. I did the whole, as I say, my relationship with the JCB ADT, bearing in mind I was there in 1988, and here we are 38 years later, and I'm talking about the reintroduction of the JCB ADT. I had a whole story. I actually got up at 4:40 yesterday morning to write the script for that. Recorded it all. It was all ready to go, and I've lost the camera. Honestly, I cannot begin to tell you how gutted I am. You're right. I don't suppose he will give me the camera again. Has the camera got a tracker on it? It has got a tracker on it, but it's one. It works effectively like a Bluetooth tracker. So if it's disconnected from your phone, and you're in, the same room or the same vicinity, it will trigger it. I'm 240 miles away from, well, maybe that's an exaggeration. I'm a good couple of hundred miles away from the JCB headquarters, and Lord alone knows where the coach is today. And Jim says, yeah, rather gutting. Fingers crossed it turns up. I honestly, it's. I said to my wife last night, you have a day and a half of great fun and laughing and joking and catching up with mates at JCB, catching up with some of the mates in the press. You're having a fine old time, seeing all this new equipment, getting ready to come home and show it to all of you lot. Gone. Now, I guess on the upside, Fred shot a lot of the stuff. He didn't shoot me filming myself, so that bit has gone. As I say, the Samoteur stuff has gone, at least for now, unless the camera does turn up. So yeah, it really did put a bit of a black mark on the whole thing. I'm gutted. I am absolutely gutted, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. I've just had an email from JCB to say they're still looking. Hopefully it will turn up, but I can't say I'm hopeful. And I'm certainly not I'm not actually saying that the coach driver has stolen it, because they work very closely with JCB. I'm sure they are very, very all above board and everything else. But who's to say somebody else hasn't spotted it and put it in their pocket? You just don't know. Have they painted the blue roofs on the 520s? Yes. Well, they weren't blue anymore. No, the 420X and the 520X look splendid. They look as good as you would hope they would look. They really did. The one drawback was, because of the weather, the 715, they drove it around a bit so that we could film it on the camera that I now don't have. The 420X and the 520X, they drove them back and forth a little bit, but no real digging or anything like that. So we've got footage, but not really ideal. They're basically keeping their powder dry for Hillhead, which I know is a couple of weeks away, and you'll get to see them for yourself. But I was really, really hoping to bring them to you. So fingers crossed on the camera. Couple of other things as well. Well, I'll tell you now that the coach I was on was driven by a guy who goes by the name of Big Daz. He's got a big sign on the side of his cab, Big Daz, and I was sat in the front row because there wasn't many people on the coach when I left. So Ken says, I think it'll turn up. Ken, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Dan says, hardest part, loss of the footage and the excitement to share, but let's hope it does turn up. Yeah, as I say, as it stands at the moment, all it's going to do is delay the coverage, because I've got to wait for Fred to produce his, or I've got to wait for JCB to locate and send me back my camera. I mean, to the point where if they'd have said last night, despite the fact that I drove back from Staffordshire last night, if they'd have said, we've just found your camera, I was literally going to turn the car around and go back up again. That's how gutted I am. So, yeah, there you are. Couple of other things as well. First and foremost, I want to tell you that kind of a poignant day yesterday, and kind of a stark reminder as well. Graham Black, the editor of Earth Movers, who I have known for probably 30 years, is retiring. Not immediately. He's got a couple of months to go, but he is retiring. Got a nice presentation from JCB because it's officially his last trip up to JCB. So yes, Graham Black is stepping down. Guy called Nick Johnson, who used to be a plant hire executive, is still around. I think Nick is probably in his 70s now. I'm fairly sure he is. But if Nick finally, I mean, he's semi-retired, if he actually hangs up his boots, I'll be the oldest person doing this in this country. I started out doing this about 23 years old, and I was the young upstart. You know, I was the sharp-dressed, long-haired, earring-wearing Herbert. And lo and behold, here we are, close on 40 years later, and I'm going to be the old stager. That was quite poignant. The other thing as well, you may have seen in the WhatsApp group, obviously there was a lot of talk about JCB potentially quitting the UK and upping sticks to America. Their American factory is coming on in great guns, and they are going to be shifting some of the production over there. Some of the telescopic handlers are going over there. But the reassuring thing is, I asked several of their senior directors, including the CEO himself, Graham MacDonald. I said, are you leaving? No, we are committed to the UK. We're spending 100 million to expand the world headquarters and the factory there. We're going nowhere. And a few others, when I mentioned it, just kind of rolled their eyes. By the sound of it, it was one of those sound bites that was taken completely out of context, or here's an hour-long interview, but we'll grab that sentence because that's the bit that will sell newspapers. So as I say, it's not going anywhere, which is all good news. I'm going to show you something else that they revealed in just a moment, but I'm going to go over to Andy Dalville. Morning, everyone. Throwing muck into trucks, not a bad way to spend your morning. There's some names from the past. Used to read every word. Yeah, plant hire executive was well, basically the way that my crossing paths with Nick came about was he used to work for a magazine called Plant Manager's Journal, and in 1987 I was working on Contract Journal, also a construction magazine, and we bought PMJ, Plant Manager's Journal. Nick decided not to come with it, so we acquired it, and I was given the role of deputy editor. And we acquired it. And while we were acquiring it, Nick went off and started his own thing called Plant Hire Executive. And he was so far ahead of his time. Nick does rub people up the wrong way from time to time because he's a bit of a stickler, but so far ahead of his time. He used to have a column in PHE called Nick Johnson at the Controls, and he would report, like, for example, yesterday we saw this Site Master, the 3CX Site Master, the low cost, low spec 3CX. He would have reported on the launch of that, but then a few weeks later, he would actually go out and he would report on. He would actually go and drive one on a customer site. He'd go and have a spin on it and come back and do a Nick Johnson at the controls. It would have been the best YouTube channel ever because Nick knows his onions. He really does. But unfortunately, it was very, very much pre-YouTube. Chris Fulton, I miss Don Baldry. Man alive, that takes me back. That really does take me back. I mean, I was working with, I met Don loads of times, but I was working alongside people who you may even not know. A guy called Rodney Biles over at New Civil Engineer, Laurie Tootle on Construction News, all these names from the past. Simon Murray. Simon Murray was at one of the very first press conferences I attended, and he was pointing out who all of my peers were. There was a long table, and he said, "Oh, that guy over there, that's Nick Johnson. He knows his stuff. And that guy over there, that's Rodney Biles. Yeah, he's a bit abrasive, but he's a really good journalist." He went round all of them, and he got to one. I won't name him. He got to one, and he said, "And that over there, that's a cunt." Turns out I knew nothing at the time, and I didn't know the guy who was pointing at, but it turns out he was absolutely right. I remember reading all those mags. Yeah. It's funny, you know how you will get excited about, when we talk about, the old Cat D8 and, the Priestmans and the Hymax. Well, that buzz that you get talking about that, I get that with magazines. Construction Plant Weekly. Who remembers that? Probably not very many, but one of my closest friends in journalism was the editor of that for a while. And really, it was just a great time. The late 80s was a great time for magazines. Contract Journal and Construction News were really going at each other. PMJ and Plant Hire Executive were really battling it out, and it raised our game. It was like Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. One would take a lead and then the other. It really was. And you look at it now. I wrote a piece actually, and I will, if I can find the link, I'll drop you a link. I wrote a thing the other day about the current state of industry journalism, which I'm not a fan of. When we left yesterday, JCB have got a new online newsroom, and I will get on with the show in a moment, but this kind of brings you up to date. JCB have got a new newsroom online, so rather than giving us memory sticks and stuff like that yesterday or printed press releases, they basically gave us access to a newsroom. So we've got, all full details of the spec of the 715, the 520X, 420X, and so on down the line. All the photographs are there as well. Now, I intend to come back, obviously the camera is a bit of an issue, but we'll get around that. But my plan was to come back and to disseminate, to go through that and not just tell you what JCB had said, tell you what I thought, tell you, the experience, tell you, they claim this, but, we know, but also to put things in context. Things like the 715 is a good example. The reason the 715 makes even more sense today than the 712 back in the day. If you think back to 1988 when the 712 came out, the biggest site dumpers in the market were probably 6 or 7 tons at that point. Now, already forward visibility on a site dumper would have been problematic when you've got a big pile in the front. So you've got operators kind of looking around the pile, which, from a health and safety point of view, is not great. JCB stopped making their ADTs around about 1996. In the time they've been away, those site dumpers have gone from 6 and 7 to 8, 9, and even 10 tons. So the pile in front of the operator is even bigger still. Obviously there is a high dreamer out there, but the high dreamer is not cheap, and it's a high dreamer. It's a fantastic machine, but it's not cheap. The return of the 715 makes even more sense than the introduction of the 712. But my guess is that none of the journalists that were present there, aside from possibly Graham Black, possibly Nick Johnson, will pick up on that. They will basically take the press release and they'll reprint it. So all of that context and background and all of that will be lost. You'll just be presented with a press release. It'll be the press release photographs. I mean, there were people there yesterday, and I'm not going to name names because, frankly, don't care, but there were people there yesterday. There's me and Fred running around with, he's got 3 cameras on the go and a drone. I've got 1 camera, which I subsequently lost. We've got microphones, we've got lighting rigs, we've got tripods. There were some people there didn't have a notepad or a camera. They just turn up, eat the lunch, take the press release traditionally, and then they go away and reproduce it. And I do think that's not looking great for the future of journalism, because context, the article that I've written, and I will link to it in just a moment, but the article that I've written refers to the current situation with specifically the American press. Donald Trump wakes up in a bad mood, says something off the cuff, and they print it as fact. The Iranian army and the Iranian navy is defeated. Well, it ain't. Clearly, it ain't. Because if it was, the Strait of Hormuz would be open. But we now have a generation of journalists that lack the balls and the ability to push back, which is bad from global politics, but even down to something sort of niche like we're doing here. It's bad for this industry. You used to be able to look at something that Nick Johnson had written or Rodney Barnes had written or Graham Black had written or hopefully something that I'd written and think, oh, yeah, there is a wider thing about this. Now, no. Ed Butler has just joined us. Morning, Ed. How is Wales this morning? The last report I heard was it was not too bad at all. That's the only way to truly judge a machine out on a live site doing proper work. Yes, 100%. JCB did offer us the opportunity, not because of the lost camera, although obviously that's now looking for even more like it needs to happen. They did say, come back when the machines are able to work and the weather's a bit better. So hopefully, first things first, hopefully the camera will be found. If it's not found, I'd like to get myself back up there. But there you are. Dan says, not looking good at the moment. Definitely not that madness. Why would you go to a release with no camera? Yeah. What is the point? If all you're going to do is reproduce the press release, stay at home. Stay in the office. Save your petrol. Save the environment a little bit of exhaust emissions. Just get JCB to send you the press release and you print it. I don't know why anyone would want to read that, but why? Yeah, it's a funny old world we live in, I'm afraid. From an operator point of view, I'd rather be in a higher 714 style cab. You and me both. Now, in fairness, JCB did launch a cab dumper, 9-ton. I can't remember the nomenclature for it. I'll look it up. But there's a 9-ton cab dumper, and it's kind of like a take on the dual drive. So you can drive it forwards as you would a dump truck, but you can also spin around and a bit like the Revo truck from Mechalak and whatever the Wacker Neuson one is. But 9 tons, fantastic looking machine. But when you see the 715, it's just like, that makes more sense. If you're hauling 12.5 tons, stick it behind the operator and drive. Did you speak to them about a day out there? I spoke to them about several things, that being one of them. And I also spoke to, they've got a new marketing guy on board, a guy called Johan Evans, who has joined the team that I normally deal with. And I had dinner with him night before last. And I was talking to him about, my plan for doing a live stream from JCB, but I also mentioned the open day. He said he will look into it. The problem apparently is that they've got a completely full schedule. So unless we can possibly piggyback off of somebody else, it's going to be quite hard by the sound of it. But he is going to look into it, and he seemed very enthusiastic. But I also said, the idea of getting me up there with some of the audience so that I can do a live stream, possibly from their theatre, broadcast it live, but then have their various product specialists come in, have somebody in the excavators, maybe get Georgina in to talk backhoes, get somebody in on wheel loaders, get somebody to talk about the new cab dumper, get somebody to talk about the 715 and so on down the line. We could fill a day up there quite easily. So he's taken that away. I mean, as with everything, camera, my fingers are crossed. live stream from JCB, fingers are crossed. Getting back up to Kevin Quarry when the rain isn't coming in sideways, fingers crossed. There's a whole lot that I'd like to do. I'm just hoping that we can pull it off, but I'll keep you posted on all of that. But we are almost half an hour in, and I haven't even told you this. I'm sure some of you will remember that we've got this going on. There is another of our Air Up water bottles. The first one has already gone out, went up to Gary Muirhead earlier in the week, although I don't suppose for one moment he's seen it. That's what it looks like. That's the one that comes with a little... I was going to say they're flavour pods. That's not true. They're kind of fragrance pods. But the waft of the fragrance goes up your hooter, and you feel like you're tasting, in this case, like cola or watermelon or peach or whatever flavour you've purchased to go with it. We have got some flavour packs to give away. But you need a question to go with this. And I've been over onto the website, and I will do this for you now, save you having to go and root around for it. I'm going to post in the chat a direct website. That is the Air Up website right now, or the FAQ, frequently asked questions, over there. There you are. That's the question, as you can see at the top of the screen. To win an Air Up bottle, just answer in words. I don't want numbers, I want words. Otherwise, it will not work. The question is, how many litres of water can be flavoured by a single Air Up pod? The answer is on that FAQ. It's there very, very clearly. Just go over there, find the answer, and in words, or a word rather, just type that word into the chat. You'll be in with a shout. We'll be doing the draw later in the show, which does bring us to the beginning of the show, a half an hour in. So let me have a bit of this. Chris Ford is, I think he must have taken a wild stab. It's the wrong answer, Chris. It's the wrong answer. But it is Thursday, the 14th of May. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. You know the rest. In today's show, JCB sets its sights on another world speed record. Bobcat's new king of the castle. We're getting down and dirty with large cat dozers. And at the end of the show, all hail our new robotic overlords. It'll make sense when we get there, I promise. And in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, Dust Up. Dust Up. We are talking about dust. As I say, there is a chance for one lucky person to win an Air Up hydration system, one of 5 that we'll be giving away. One's already gone, so we've got 4 left. We're giving away 1 today. Somebody's put something in the chat. Nope, Dan, that's not the right answer either. And you've typed it as a number. Not that it would have made any difference. It's the wrong answer. Have a look at the FAQ. Oh, you've got the link there. Or just type into your browser how Air Up works. I'm sure that will take you there as well. The answer is very, very clearly written there. We do have a correct answer, but we're doing it as a prize draw. But if anybody else wants to be in the draw, kind of copy Dan Cullen, because he had a wild swing and then he got the right answer. So have a look at that. Let's get things underway. We're going to be doing something a bit longer with Caterpillar in just a moment, but we'll start with this from Caterpillar, and then I'll show you this new product from JCB. Now, I will press on in just a moment, but we just had a comment here from Chris Ford, who says, "You're right. I'd miss the show if I went to the website." I don't know if you're using an iPhone on the browser. There's a little down here, right on the right-hand corner. There's a square within a square. If you click that, it will allow you to open another browser window. So you could actually carry on watching the show and go over there at the same time. But I can tell you that as it stands at the moment, Chris, you're not in the running. Cheers, Dan. Dan Cullen didn't even bother. Dan Cullen. Demo Darv didn't even bother leaving the website. He just copied Dan Cullen. Makes perfect sense. Well done. And you're welcome. So, yes, because of the whole situation with the camera, it's bringing a tear to my eye, it really is, and to my wallet, because of the whole situation with the camera, and because we got back fairly late last night and so on, we haven't had a chance as yet to find out what Fred has filmed and various other bits and pieces. So I can't today bring you details of the new equipment that JCB showed off. But before all of that began, they did announce something rather large. 20 years ago, they went to America with their Diesel Max to set a land speed record for a diesel-powered vehicle. 20 years on, that record still stands. But as you all know, I can never remember this. Je n'ai content. That's the JCB slogan, which is never satisfied, never content. Well, even though they've had a world speed record in diesel for the past 20 years, they're not content with that. They're going to try and do the same again with hydrogen. Yeah, well, Godspeed to them. Godspeed to them. A couple of questions here. I can tell you, Dan, you don't need to keep entering because you've already got the right answer. You're good to go. That is the wrong answer. Bizarrely, it's the system is registering the fact that there are 7 entries, but I've only seen 2 or 3. But yeah, don't know. Chris, that is not right, but somehow you have fluked the right answer. Jim Turner says, are they doing something with Colin Furze as he was up at JCB at the same time as you? They kind of are. Part of not last night, the night before, was quite strange. We went and saw some of the new products in the theatre, and then we basically went off and did our own thing and what have you. Then we were led in for dinner. If you've been to the JCB World Headquarters, the bit where sort of round the side where the JCB experiences, we were in the reception bit there, and you go into the right, and there's a big sort of open area where they host dinners and functions and stuff like that. Well, we went in there, and we're quite surprised that Lord Bamford himself turned up, and George Bamford turned up, and a few people that I didn't really recognise. Anyway, it turns out that machine there, or that vehicle there, was hiding behind a curtain, and it became very, very clear that obviously the construction press were there, but also quite a few of the automotive press and the influencers were there, because at one point it was the whole proceedings was handed over to one of the, I think she's a TV presenter, blonde lady, I didn't catch her name, blonde lady who does like Formula One and stuff like that. So she did the hosting. Lord Bamford got up and spoke about it. George got up and spoke about, hydrogen, and basically the whole idea behind that is when JCB truly entered the diesel engine market, they wanted to sort of set a precedent to say, look, here's how powerful, how reliable our diesel engines are, which is what prompted the Diesel Max. Well, in the nicest possible way, they're pressing repeat because they want to prove just how good, how powerful, how reliable that their hydrogen combustion engines are. So they've reassembled the team, including some of the people that led the previous project. The driver will be the same, and I'll tell you a bit about that in a moment. But basically, they are using this as an opportunity to prove hydrogen engines. So that was why Colin Furze and a bunch of the automotive press were there. I'm going to do this one very quickly, and I'll tell you the other bit. That's so cool. What an amazing achievement to be involved in. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing which would be good, I think, is the last time they did it 20 years ago, really and truly, was it wasn't pre-internet, but it was kind of pre-YouTube and stuff like that. So it kind of happened, and it was only after it happened we all went, oh, they broke the record. Wow, fantastic. This time around, all things being equal, we'll be able to watch it live. We'll actually be able to tune in and watch the damn thing unfold. I do wish them enormous success with it. It looks awesome kit. It really does. You see it up close. I mean, that thing was 20 foot long, if not even more than that. And it's like an arrow. It really is. But going back to the driver, I caught up with a couple of the JCB guys, and they were sharing the fact that they decided to do the job, and they were building the car and working, reassembling the team and everything else, and they invited the driver from the Diesel Max 20 years ago to JCB and sat him through the presentation. We're going to do this, and this is the dates, and this is how we're going to build it, and these are the things, all of the things. At the end of it, they were all a bit, having seen all that, would you be interested? Could we possibly convince you? Would you think about maybe, could we convince you to drive it again? And he laughed and said, oh, they already asked me on the helicopter on the way down here. I've already said yes. But yeah, one of the questions from the floor, funnily enough, to the driver was, when he did the Diesel Max, he was 20 years younger. He's obviously 20 years older now. And is that going to be a factor? And he very diplomatically and very well handled the question. He basically said, I am 20 years older, but I'm 20 years more experienced, and I'm 20 years more knowledgeable and 20 years wiser. So I genuinely, I don't think I've ever used this expression in conversation, but JCB Hydromax, Godspeed, gentlemen. Godspeed. Dan says, one thing I do wonder about the hydrogen tank on the JCB, about stability and water ingress condensation. Have they spoken about that? Stability isn't actually a problem. Because the gas is under pressure, 350 bar, that roof storage unit, which is made of I was going to say plastic. It's obviously not plastic. It's something much more highfalutin than that. But I'll tell you what, we'll throw it open. How much do you think the hydrogen in that tank weighs? Give it a shot and see if you can get close. Chris Ford said, I tried parachuting the other day. The bloody thing wouldn't open. On the way down, I met a bloke coming up. Do you know anything about parachutes? I asked. He said, no. Do you know anything about hydrogen? Yeah. Fair comment. And I mean, I did mention to one of the JCB guys, I think it was Buzz Aldrin, when he was going off to the moon, said, at the point of takeoff, you're very conscious of the fact you're sat on millions of tons of rocket fuel, and the fuel tank was made by the lowest bidder. I thought that would go through my mind, but I mean, the guy is a former, I think he was ex-RAF, like fighter pilot. The Diesel Max did 350 miles an hour, and apparently it had more in it. I would guess this will be about the same speed. This is a guy that has flown at faster than the speed of sound. 350 mile an hour to him is probably like us doing 30 mile an hour down our local school road. But as I say, Godspeed to them. Godspeed, one and all. Hang on a minute. We just saw something come up. Gary Muirhead as well. He's here as well. Morning, Gary. To catch up, look at the top of the screen there. That's how you go about doing the competition. I'm fairly sure I can repost the link. Oh, no, Gary, you've already won one. Don't bother entering because I'm not going to give you one. You've already got one. Ignore everything I've just said, but there's a reminder on how people can enter. So those that arrived a bit late, Ed Butler being one, if you fancy yourself an air-up bottle like that, follow the instructions at the top of the screen. Bobcat. Let's talk about Bobcat. I'm heading off to Debris in the Czech Republic in the not too distant future. And one of the products I'm hoping to catch up with is this one.
This might look like a place for kings and queens, but today it belongs to this. Meet the all-new Bobcat T650, tough enough for your work and confident enough to show up anywhere. Compact, agile, and unbelievably easy to handle. It turns on the spot and works where others simply can't fit. Zero turn, maximum control. And when the scenery changes, this machine doesn't care. Sand, heat, dust, long days, bring it on. With a proven 75 horsepower Bobcat engine, powerful cooling, and protected components, uptime is no longer a wish. It's standard equipment. High-flow hydraulics of 115 liters per minute, serious breakout force, and best-in-class cycle times. You have one machine with endless possibilities. It's compact in size, but absolutely not in performance. Bob-touch compatibility, precision controls. You have a front-row view of your work, so every move is exactly where you want it. From castles to construction sites, from beaches to backyards, this is not just a machine you can rely on. It's the one that gets the job done. Anywhere, anytime.
Gary just said, I received mine this morning in the post. Thank you. No problem at all, sir. Chris Ford says, hydrogen is lighter than air as a gas, so it's lighter when it's compressed. So 150 kilograms. You're a mile out. An absolute mile out. 9 kilograms of hydrogen in that. I want to say roof panel. It's not a roof panel. It's actually 3 side-by-side fuel cells that take 3 kilograms each. 9 kilograms. That's all there is. And if you look very closely, fuel tank sits on the roof, and if you're looking out of the operator's window from the operator's seat, on the left-hand side, there is a line that runs down the cab and into the engine compartment. That's how 9 kilograms. It's nothing at all. You get that in your pocket. I've got 3 of them in the cupboard, and kids. Yes, kids and bottles. Yeah, we've got a fair few here as well. Gary says, "How was JCB? I see Graham Black from Earth Movers magazine received a wonderful gift from Lord Bamford." Yes, he did. Felt like a bit of an end of an era, actually. Although here's a thing. They made a big deal, and rightly so. Graham's been a great servant to the industry, but they made a great deal out of the fact that Graham Black has been editor of Earth Movers for 22 years. Well, I've been doing this for 38. They also spoke about the fact that he's done about 260 issues of Earth Movers. Today is episode 1135. It's impossible to compare. He does a different job to me. I have nothing but respect and admiration for him. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to work alongside him. But yeah, 22 years. I've done nearly twice that much. Nick Johnson has still got me beat. I don't want Nick Johnson to retire, because the day Nick Johnson says, "That's it, I've had enough," that's it. That puts me at the top table. That basically said, yeah, the oldest fart in this room is that fella right there. This guy. Not looking forward to that at all. What is the lasting time of the tank of hydrogen? Do you know, I've got to check that, Dan. But it's not like an electric thing. This will do you a day. You know, we're not talking about recharging and refueling. What was interesting, I'm trying to remember the name. I think the company's name is Hykit, Hykit. That is their refueling solution. They've done it in partnership with a company called Hykit, who are based in Oxford. But I checked on our company's house to see who the directors are, and one of the directors is Joe Bamford, Lord Bamford's son. He's one of the drivers of hydrogen in this country anyway. So if you want the JCB hydrogen backhoe loader, which is now commercially available, you can actually go out and buy one right here, right now, and you can have that alongside it. Good to go. You're good to go, and it keeps it all in the JCB family. I need to start up something competition. Well, feel free. You feel free, mate. Not a problem at all. The more, the merrier. That's one of the things that I kind of. Maybe that was one of the things that was sad about Graham Black going. I don't suppose he's going to stray too far because it's in his blood. You know, he's been involved in construction equipment for 40 plus years, I would imagine. He did the PR for Case back in the day before he became an editor and stuff. But when I think back to, what I consider to be my time, early or the mid 80s up to the mid 90s, there were some real stars of the bit of the industry that I'm in. As I said, Graham Black, Nick Johnson, Rodney Biles, Adrian Barker, and Don Baldry, and Laurie Tootle, and Dan Gilks, and Mike Wolf. Well, Mike Wolf and Dan Gilks are still around. But yeah, all of the others are gone. And I look around now. I mean, you look around now and it's, well, I don't know him. I don't know her. I've never seen this person before in my life. I have seen that person before in my life, and they clearly know absolutely fuck all about this business. It feels a little sad. Feels like the end of an era. I love the JCB family motto. Never content. I see it on the tail of the new Hydromax. Yes, it is there. If you have a chance, I think Fred's put it up. Fred's done like a very quick Instagram reel over on Diggers and Dozers. If you're on Instagram, have a look at that, because he actually does a bit of a close up, and you can see that very slogan there. And Gary, you have been to the factory. That is not just on the tail of that machine. It's also, you walk down corridors, it's on the wall. There's a stairwell off the back of the JCB Experience. It's on the wall there. It really is part of their lifeblood. I'm very surprised there aren't more competition in live streams. All interested in influencing. It's ridiculous, and they all know nothing. Yeah. I guess, I know I'm slightly tongue-in-cheek in the fact that I've been doing this since Christ was a choir boy, but one of the things that it does allow me to do, I've got 38 years of experience to call upon. Things like, the 712 and 715 is a perfect example. To some of the people that were gathered there today, oh, wow, what exciting news. JCB, the digger manufacturer, has entered the ADT market. Whereas the likes of Graham Black, Nick Johnson, and myself were sat there thinking, we've been here before. We've definitely been here before. We've seen this before. I think that the reasoning behind it is more valid now, and I do think that the 715 is a marked. I always loved the 712, but this is a marked improvement. It looks really sleek and smart and everything else, but they lack that depth, that context, that background. So, with all that being said, I don't believe any of the upstarts could host a live stream of this type, because they wouldn't know enough. And listen, I couldn't have done it at 23 or 24 or probably even 30. But when you've been doing it for 38, nearly 40 years, there's a lot of shit in there that you can just drag. And somebody will say something, that reminds me of the time that I saw the thing, But in the plus side, with today's technology, more operators have the chance to voice their opinions to the masses. They do. But one of the things, and I still haven't done that Jamie Tavui video, which I'm just so ashamed of, but I just haven't been sat still for long enough. But he triggered it, but then Dan has triggered it as well. If you watch the WhatsApp group, you know that Dan turned up at a site the other day, was expecting one job and was told it was going to be another. Obviously, that's very, very bad from the worker's point of view, from the operator's point of view. You've trekked 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles to go to a job, and you find out either the job isn't there or the job is different to what you were told. It's less money. You haven't been paid for digs when you were told you're going to be paid for digs, and so on down the line. It also highlights the fact that, going back to Jim's point about they have, operators do have a voice, but they are voices in silos. Now, Jamie Talvuri was different because he put his on LinkedIn and he did get some traction from it, and he did end up winning his case against Flannery's. But, we lack that unity. One operator saying this is wrong, that's not good. But 2 operators, it's a bit louder. 10 say it, it's louder still. If 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 UK construction and demolition workers say this is wrong, it needs to stop, whatever that might be, then you've got the attention of the wider community. That's, I think, is the interesting point. I think the first plant magazine I read was published by the Institute of Mechanical Plant Engineers in the 70s. Wow. Yeah, I don't even remember that. Gary Muirhead says, still no sign of Lord Bamford retiring at the fine age of 80 plus years. Well done, sir. Yeah, well done indeed. If I look as good as him at 80, I'll be very happy. But I did feel like he'd slowed a little yesterday. That he walked up from sort of the ground, or not yesterday, the night before last. He walked from the ground up onto a stage. Well, not high, not stairs and everything else. But maybe he was just milking the applause because there was a lot of it. Maybe he was milking the applause, but he seemed a bit slow. That being said, he was then fielding questions and he did not miss a beat. But also the fact that George Bamford was there. And George is very, very actively involved, certainly in the Hydromax thing. I wonder if there is now a transition incoming. And I do think, I saw him again. I spoke to him at some length day before yesterday. We tend to overlook the fact that they've got a really, really, really good CEO in place. It's a guy called Graham McDonald. He's been there. I don't know. I mean, I dredged up I was on the BBC with Graham and with JCB 10 years ago yesterday. It came up on my Facebook. So he's certainly been there a decade. And, regardless of the changes at the very top table at JCB, the day-to-day running is in some seriously safe hands. They've got a great team there. They really have. Let's have a look. Chris Rod says, or something like that. It was a long time ago. I wonder, does anyone remember the CMPE? I remember speaking at CMPE events. Was that Contractors Mechanical Plant? I can't remember what it's called, because I do remember there used to be an exhibition up at Haydock, which was a CMPE event. Like a mini SED right on the Haydock Racecourse. So I did that years ago, but I was invited to attend a CMPE meeting down in Sussex about 1,000 years ago, and it was at a time when I was really pushing the envelope on things related to plant theft. And I got a phone call to say, could you come down, because the police are going to be here, and they're going to be talking about plant theft. You're obviously very actively involved and very vocal about plant theft. Could you come down? I said, yeah, not a problem at all. So I got there, and I was planning to stay the night. So I had a swift half and another swift half. I had a couple of pints, and I was sat in the audience thinking, well, this is fantastic. I'm sat here, feet up. And they went, and representing Plant Managers Journal, Mark Anthony. Mark, would you care to tell us the latest? And they expected me to speak. I mean, thankfully, as you can probably tell, we're nearly an hour in and I haven't done half the show yet. You can tell I can speak a bit. But yeah, I was probably 4 pints in at the time. Like, yes, hop up on the stage and tell us how the world works. I meant on plant and the manufacturers. What does that relate to? Yes. Yeah, no, it's true. It is true. But again, I mean, there again, I'm going back to that point, the fact that operators do have the ability to speak. I realise you are, this will sit very uncomfortably with you, Jim, but you are now considered an influencer. You'd be considered a micro-influencer with your 1,000+ YouTube subscribers, but you are an influencer. The problem is, and where I see the fault with this, is you, with all of your experience, all your knowledge, all your wisdom, is speaking to an audience about that big. There are some people who do not know a fraction of what you know. And they're speaking to an audience, you can't even see my hands, that big. They've got, where you've got 1,000 followers, they've got 100,000, 500,000. Even though they know very, very, very little, they have the bigger audience. That's where my problem is. That could be it, Mark. Once went to Haydock, very early 80s. Yeah, mine would have been around about 87, 88, I would have thought. That was when I was pushing the whole thing on plant theft. And they used to do one down south, and I'm bugging if I can remember where it was. There was the show up in Haydock, and there was another one down south somewhere, and I can't for the life of me remember where it was. Dan says, you see where a tractor was stolen from a farm and they drove it into a house. I did see that. Yeah, I did see that. And it wasn't drunken, was it? Wasn't it a deliberate wrecking of the house or the tractor, or possibly both? Very mismanaged out there, and heightened the fact the lack of communication. It's bloody madness. Yeah, I'm writing something about this tomorrow. Partly to assuage my guilt in the fact that I haven't published the Jamie Tavui interview yet. But it runs deeper than just that. If you think, in the nicest possible way, Dan, and I do mean this with the ultimate respect, you are a hired asset. Okay, so that they have a machine, mini excavator, bigger excavator, dumper, ADT, dozer, whatever it might be. They have an empty seat for which they need a hired asset, an experienced, competent, card-carrying asset to make that machine work. Because that machine, frankly, can do nothing without somebody like you in the seat. They can't organize that. If you look out the window of a site office and you see 5 machines, you'd think, we probably need 5 operators. At the point where you have 5 operators, surely your first inclination is to pick the phone up and speak to the recruitment agency and say, we've got our 5, don't need any more, thanks for your help. But no, people continue to arrive with no job, or they arrive for one job and they're told, oh, well, no, there's no excavator job, you go and drive the dumper every other hour, or whatever it might be. But that then carries over to the equipment itself. How many times have you been on sites, particularly sort of larger sites, where there's been a site dumper, for example, or a mini excavator sat there, hasn't turned a wheel or a track in the past week, 2 weeks, 3 months, and it's sat there racking up higher money after higher money after higher money, rental, and it hasn't turned a wheel. All because, again, somebody hasn't picked up the phone and said, we don't need this. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm trying my best to grow it, but I can't claim any influence over anything. I think that will come, though, Jim. I think that will come. On the day, which, and I did mention you in dispatches again, just very quickly. I mentioned you to a guy called Richard Brooks, who was taken over the role of innovation director at JCB from Tim Burnhope. Saw Tim, by the way, he's looking very well. But Richard Brooks, I've given him your name and everything else. But on the day that they actually invite you up to JCB and they turn you loose on the 420X or the 520X or the new 715 ADT, and you go away and on your channel to 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 subscribers, you say, I have driven the 420X or the 520X. It does this very well. It does that very well. But I'm not particularly keen on this. That I didn't like, or it seemed to be a lacking in this area, or they could have done this better. That is influence. And because you do it from a point of view of genuine experience and knowledge and wisdom, that carries weight. Not that I'm putting any pressure on you. Dan, pay attention. Gary says, if you get any chance, Dan, wouldn't you prefer to be on the books with one company rather than being self-unemployed? Yeah. Do you know, I was thinking about this, about the JCB 3CX. When I first started in this business, there was a lot, and I do mean a lot, of owner operators out there. I probably joined the industry at the very, very pinnacle of backhoe loader, sort of 87, 88. The backhoe loader was going out the door in their thousands, and a lot of them were going to one-man bands, owner operators. And when Georgina Williams, the digger girl, not the digger girl, the used to be the JCB digger girl, now the happy digger girl, or whatever it is. When she announced it, she was talking about, that you could have this machine, this tool, this office for 55 grand or £206 a week. And it really took me back. Peter Haddock asked a very astute question when we were doing questions and answers about the machines and stuff. Offering a machine for 55 grand, and I know 55 grand is not cheap, but it is a business tool. It will last you years and years if you take good care of it. When you launch that, obviously it is a machine that can go out and do a job of work. But if you're 18, 19, 20, got a bit about you, a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and maybe you've got somebody in your family who's had a bit of construction experience or perhaps farming experience. Maybe you've grown up and you've driven a machine or two. Maybe you've actually done a bit of work on a farm or with a local company. And you could start your own business completely independent, set your own rates, go where you want to go, and have that machine for £206 per week. The point that Peter Haddock made about that, and as I say, I think Peter did that very, very astutely, is yes, it is. It's a tool. It's a machine. It's it's a machine that allows you to do a job, but it's also a potential source of inspiration. If you were to put that offer and that machine in front of the right 18, 19, 20, even a 25-year-old, you could have your own thriving plant hire business with you as the operator for just £206 per week. Now, listen, I know the cost of fuel. I know the cost of insurance. I'm well aware of all of that. But that does feel like a bloody good deal to me. It really does. Which triggers, go back to this. Gary asked earlier on, did you manage to speak to Peter and Lucas Haddock? Didn't see, well, I saw both of them. I said hello and I said goodbye to Lucas because he was off running around with his gimbal on the. But I had a good old chat with Peter. Caught up with Nick Drew. I haven't seen Nick for quite some time. He's looking well. So yeah, it was like getting the band back together, all present and correct, and all firing on all cylinders. Good to see the fellas. Chris Ford says, "Is that another case of not what you know, but who you know?" I'm glad I'm anonymous. Well, as you can tell, I'm not so bothered about that. I'd love to start doing some machine reviews. You're at the point now, Jim, where I think that is inevitable. Trust me when I tell you this. The equipment manufacturers, or more specifically, the PR companies that are representing them, are watching social media very, very, very closely. To the point where, with some of the people that do, they've come to the party fairly late. When we do some work with them, don't forget to tag us. Those that have been doing it for a while, like JCB, like Liebherr, like Volvo, they don't even ask. Because when I go to JCB, I know full well that they are watching my social media channels. Liebherr's the same, Volvo's the same, Caterpillar's the same. People will be aware of what you're doing. And I do think all it takes is JCB have got an influencer day coming up in the next couple of weeks, I think. I think Chris Ford's going to it. You only need one, because once you do one and you put that out there as your machine review, the momentum begins to build. Gary says, did you manage to bring up the chat about a meet and greet breakfast show at JCB? I did. You missed that, Gary. I did actually mention that earlier in the show. Yes, I did. There's a new marketing guy there who loved the idea. The meet and greet is not going to be straightforward. The live stream from there, a bit more straightforward. but I'm keeping an eye on that. I'll keep you posted. Yes, I've been looking for that, Gary, for a long time, but many companies won't take on blokes. Won't take you on the books. So they have enough employees, but only hire when needs must. I'm an owner, non-operator. Sadly, I can make more money on other people's plant. JCB shaped the industry, the plant industry, as it is today. A lot of firms started out with one man and one JCB. Yeah. I mean, even people. I mean, if you're, I don't know how well known he is outside of his area. There's a Melvin Lambert over in East Anglia, sort of. Is he Ipswich way? He used to be sort of Ipswich way. And I interviewed Melvin Lambert when I think he had 2 JCB 3CXs, very late 80s. And he's a major force in plant hire now. I don't know if he's still a JCB man, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I've got plenty of room to put machines through their paces. Yeah, well, I the manufacturers do like a bit of control. I think your first step is almost certainly going to be getting invited to somewhere like Kevin Quarry or whatever it might be. Go and have a bit of a play at their facility, and then give your views afterwards. But trust me, Jim, it's a matter of time. It's inevitable. And as I say, I'm putting your name in front of people. Sooner or later, somebody will say, all right, then, yeah, I give in. I surrender. Get Big Jim up here. You can thank me later. We've got a couple more films. I do realise I've already overrun to a ridiculous degree, but we've got a 7-minute video now about cat dozers, and it's worth it. So, Caterpillar.
Dozers are ideal tools for a variety of mining and quarry applications, from production dozing to reclamation operations. Regardless of your dozing application, it is critical that operators understand the best technique to maximise productivity and efficiency. In fact, using the wrong techniques has been shown to significantly reduce overall dozer productivity. Operators are key to maximising dozer efficiency, performance and productivity. Even good operators can increase their efficiency with a better understanding of application principles and specific dozing techniques. Join us as we explore some of these dozing techniques and best practices. There are numerous best practices surrounding dozer operation. At Caterpillar, we recommend the following general operating practices. Number 1. Doze in first gear to ensure the blade is fully loaded and you're using the full machine capability. Number 2. When the blade is loaded, steer by utilising the tilt cylinders to tilt the blade rather than steering clutches. Number 3. Minimise corner loading, prying and impact dozing. Number 4. Load the blade downhill. Take advantage of gravity and the machine weight to load the blade efficiently. Number 5. Maintain a steady dozing speed, typically between 1 to 1.5 miles per hour. Number 6. Minimise unloaded travel time by using second gear reversals. Utilising the proper slot dozing technique will significantly impact dozing efficiency and productivity. We will review the 3 common slot dozing techniques and provide pros and cons for each one. The first technique we'll explore is the back each pass technique. With this technique, the operator starts each pass at the back of the slot. The blade is loaded over the entire length of the slot at a uniform cut depth. Since the machine travels the entire length of the cut with each pass in both directions, this technique reduces efficiency and productivity by increasing the average push distance for each pass, since the dozer must now travel the same forward and reverse distances each pass. The time the operator spends in reverse is, simply put, unproductive, and this technique requires a significant amount of time in reverse. Additionally, since the slot is not fully established until the last few passes, this technique often results in a lot of spillage. Operators using the back each pass method unintentionally create windrows during the first few passes, spilling material from the side of the blade, which must be cleaned up at a later time. Back each pass also prevents operators from loading the blade downhill. As a result, the back each pass technique delivers the least productivity at the highest cost per tonne. The next technique we'll discuss is the back to front method, which is most common in stockpile applications. With this technique, the operator progresses the cut from the back to the front, which reduces the push distance with each pass as the dozer works to the front of the cut. However, since the operator is loading the blade uphill, and since the slot isn't fully utilised to keep the blade full throughout the cut, this technique reduces your dozing efficiency while increasing your fuel burn. This method will also result in windrows that will need to be cleaned up later. The final dozing technique we're going to discuss is the front to back method, which is the most efficient method of the three we've gone over. With this technique, the operator starts at the front of the slot and works towards the back by removing approximately a machine length of material each pass. The push distance will gradually increase with each pass, which reduces the average push distance significantly compared to back each pass. After the first few passes, the operator will have created a slot in front of the dozer, which holds material in front of the blade to avoid spillage and windrows, allowing the dozer to carry more material. This method also enables the operator to load the blade downhill, which leverages weight of the machine and gravity to quickly load the blade. In fact, the average push distance for this technique is about half of the distance of the back each pass technique. Front to back dozing reduces unproductive reverse time because it uses a stair-step approach to each pass. The carry portion of the cycle gets longer with each pass, minimising unloaded travel distance. Together, these factors position front to back dozing as the most efficient dozing method. Don't believe us? Watch as our three dozer operators put each technique to the test simultaneously. The D9 operator is using the front to back technique. The D10 operator is using the back to front method, and the D11 operator is using the back each pass technique. The D10 and D11 dozers are starting at the back of the slot. Is it more productive to push a big load slowly or a small load quickly? A dozer that takes a large load slowly will outproduce one that takes a smaller load faster. Why? You can only push a limited amount of material in higher gears. Pushing the same amount of material in second gear might require 4 passes versus 3 passes for a dozer in first gear. Pushing a small load quickly requires more time in reverse and prevents the operator from pushing full loads. Compare it to moving your household across the country. Would you rather do it in one big trip with a large semi-truck, or would you rather take several trips with a pickup truck? One large semi-truck is more efficient. This is why Caterpillar recommends that large dozer operators use first gear for pushing and second gear for backing up. Front to back, big load slow. Together, these two principles will help drive the highest productivity and efficiency for your dozing operation.
I found that really interesting. I know, having worked with Caterpillar for a good few years, the amount of data and information they've got on plant efficiency and fleet management and that kind of thing, unbelievable stuff. Now, very quickly, I'm going to address this one. Gary Muirhead says, "Happy belated anniversary to you and Ruth, 36 years." That's me, by the way. Quite an achievement. Have you any plans for this weekend to celebrate? Probably. We're both on diets, and celebrations normally revolve around food. So I watch this space, Gary. But thank you for the well wishes. Gary again, start doing it now, Jim. I would definitely watch it, pal, and listen to the advice from someone who's been in this industry for years, loads of experience, not some young kid who hasn't. Yeah. Don't be drawn. I can't see this happening anyway. Don't be drawn into dancing in front of machines, Jim. Just stick to what you know and know what you stick to. That's the way forward. Jim says, and that's why the travel speed button should always be on an excavator's blade lever, he says. Now, we're going back to all things talking about owner-operators. Two very good points of view here. Chris Ford says, when I first started, every man and his dog had a JCB. Dave Collins had an 860 Massey. 40 years later, there's not many still doing it. Yeah, and I'll come back to that. On the same subject, Ed Butler says, unfortunately, it's hard to make money these days just as an owner-operator. Agencies and big hire firms have killed it off, offering large quantities of plant at rock-bottom rates. Companies today will go through 20 agency operators before they take on an owner-operator. Unfortunately, in today's world, people want the best kit, but don't want to pay for it. Very, very, very good point. Consider this. I think I mentioned around about 87, 88, 89, I think we were probably, I've not studied the numbers, but it felt like that. I felt like I was around for peak backhoe loader. You know, JCB couldn't make them fast enough. Caterpillar, Case, Komatsu, Massey Ferguson couldn't make them fast enough. They were your go-to machine. Digger at one end, loader at the other, highly versatile, can tackle a whole multitude of jobs. We all know what a backhoe loader is capable of. We have less now. They're producing less. All the manufacturers are producing less. There are still some nations, India being one, a good example, where they still love the backhoe loader. I think we kind of fell out of love with the backhoe loader. Or did we? Did we, as people within the industry, fall out of love with the backhoe loader? Or were we urged down that route by the plant hirers? Go back to my heyday, 88, 89, 90. You could hire a backhoe loader with an operator. I don't know what the rate was, but you could hire that. And that guy could come along and he could dig holes, he could refill holes, he could grade, he could load trucks. We all know what a backhoe loader can do. But he could have done all of that, one man and one machine. Which, very efficient, but kind of limiting for the plant hire companies' coffers. Ultimately, they're only hiring one machine. And then we suddenly needed a mini excavator, quite possibly a dumper, quite possibly a skid steer or a compact wheel loader. So we went from one hire to two or three. Who gained from that? I'll leave that one hanging in the air. I have a design that makes it capable of so much more. Well, as I say, if I can get you face-to-face with Richard Brooks, mate, I will certainly do that. Paul McHale, good morning, Paul. Talking of machine reviews, I'm driving a brand new Sennebogen 830. I can't say anything I like about it. 46 years on various types of plant. They need to speak to operators, not someone who's never sat on a 12-hour shift. The Kobelco 550 high reach was one of the best thought-out machines I've used. Somebody wants to have a chat with the designers at Sennebogen. Cheers, Mark. Hope you're well. See, therein is one of your issues. As a professional journalist, scribe, wordsmith, gobshite, I've always thought the Sennebogens were really, really smart. But I've never operated one for more than about 10 minutes. There you go. Paul McHale, whose skills with a high reach have taken him around the world. Not a fan. Not a fan. Gary Muirhead says the JCB 3CX on-site was the Swiss Army knife and we've lost all the good expensive operators for them. How long would it take us now to train new operators up to their standards for today? Yeah. Although, following through what I was saying about how it's made us less efficient, as it stands at the moment, if you're an 18, 19-year-old, sort of fresh out of school, college, you've got your competence card and they stick you on a mini excavator. And for the next 6 months, all you do is dig little holes with your mini excavator. Maybe you load the occasional dumper, but that's pretty much all you do. You have gained yourself a skill set, but a fairly limited skill set. If you come out of school or college, you're 18, 19 years old, and they put you on a compact wheel loader or a site dumper, once again, you'll do your job, but you will come out of that with a fairly limited skill set. If that 18, 19-year-old person comes out of school or college and is stuck on a backhoe loader, they have skill sets upon skill sets upon skill sets. They can dig, they can break, they can trench, they can refill, they can grade, they can load, and all the other jobs that a backhoe loader can do. And possibly because plant hirers were looking to maximize hires, we've been led up the garden path. And I'll say this out loud. I remain a committed backhoe loader fan. I learned to drive a JCB 3CX about 1,000 years ago. It wasn't quite steam driven, but fairly close. That's how I learned to operate. And not in the hands of me, but in the hands of a good operator, there's not a great deal that a backhoe loader can't do. And yet we've kind of allowed the plant hirers to say, oh, you want to dig a hole? You'll need one of these. But then you want to put the material back again, so you'll need one of these. You want to move the material up the road? Oh, well, you'll need one of these as well. Tis bullshit, people. Tis bullshit. Well, that's a good question, Gary. Thank you for that, Dan. Gary's always good with the questions, isn't he? We've got one final film, which is kind of light-hearted. But before we get to that, I do want to say a very quick thank you to MB Crusher. MB Crusher were the sponsors of our, what did we call it? Voyage to Vegas. Our Voyage to Vegas series, they sponsored that. They also sponsored our Voyage to Verona series, and they've stuck around. They are sponsoring our Highway to Hillhead series. Hillhead is now not far off, 5-6 weeks, not far off. So although the film I'm about to show you has got bugger all to do with Hillhead, here is the new advert from MB Crusher. So thank you for MB Crusher for that. Dan says, I always say to operators, go and get on different projects and learn about 360s, 360s, ducks can do, and treat every day like a school day. Every day should be a school day, 100%. They seem to be a fantastic company, Mark. I bet you're happy to have them as a sponsor. Delighted. I mean, not just because they help pay the bills, but they are an absolute pleasure to deal with. They really are. They look after us very, very well. Would like a few more. I do think we're on the verge. The deal is signed. I'm just waiting for the ad to arrive. We've got another new sponsor coming on board, probably next week, actually, all things being equal, but I'll keep you posted on that. We've got one more film for you. If I asked you to describe your next colleague, you haven't met them yet. You'd probably think, probably male. The law of averages suggests they're probably male. Probably white. Law of averages again. Maybe, in their 30s. Maybe got a beard. Maybe got their arse hanging out their jeans. What about if your next colleague looked like this?
Unitree has just pulled back the curtain on something that feels straight out of science fiction. This is the Unitree GD01, the world's first production-ready manned mecha that can transform, with an estimated weight of around 500 kilograms when occupied. We see the Unitree CEO, Wang Xingxing, demonstrating the mecha's capabilities firsthand. The mecha can shift its weight while its joints whir with precision as it transitions from a towering bipedal stance into a compact, four-legged crouch. You can see Wang Xingxing's hands gripping the controls, becoming one with the machine as it begins to walk down the street with a heavy, rhythmic stride. Beneath its rugged, high-strength aluminum and carbon fiber exoskeleton lies a hybrid embodied intelligence machine. Unitree has not published the exact full compute stack, but the company says that the human provides the command, while the robot's onboard edge systems handle the reactions, balance, sensing, and motion control. It processes data from a sophisticated super sensing system in real time, allowing the pilot to walk the machine through narrow streets and even smash through solid brick walls with its powerful hydraulic arms. The vision system is equally impressive, utilizing head-mounted high-definition binocular cameras and wrist cameras that provide a complete 360-degree view. The reported starting price is about $650,000, placing it in a category that is far beyond consumer robotics and firmly inside the world of ultra-premium engineering.
Now, I like me a bit of tech, but I've also seen RoboCop, and I've also seen Terminator. I know how that all pans out. Bit like the exoskeleton in Alien. Was it Aliens, the second one? Jim, funnily enough, me and the lad I'm working with were just talking about these robot suits this morning and how handy they'd be on site. Yeah. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says, my next colleague will probably be a stuck-up twat and a know-it-all. But no way, that looks awful. Why would you buy that? Why would you buy it? One of those suits, which apparently is available, $650,000 for one of those. And getting in and out of it looks terrible. And bearing in mind, I don't know whether the guy that was getting in and out was Chinese or Japanese, but they do tend to be quite diminutive. Imagine trying to get me in there with my bad back and my sketchy knees, or somebody of Jim's height. No chance. What a waste of time and money. Dan, unimpressed. Dan, I'll come to that in just a moment because I've got it on the screen right now. Chris Ford says, I know who wasn't the winner. Well, actually, Chris, I think you're in the draw because inadvertently you typed the word 5. The answer was 5 litres per pod. That's the answer, and you managed to type that in, I think. And Chris also says a 3C was a good foundation for any plant operator, especially a 2-wheel drive one. You learn how to get in a mess, and more importantly, how to get out of it. Yeah. Show me that somebody that's even just quite good on a backhoe loader, and I'll show you somebody that's actually a pretty good operator all round. Really do think that. Jim Turner saying that's a bargain. Well, Jim, when you become a YouTube millionaire, which I'm sure is only a matter of days away, maybe you can get yourself one, take that for a test drive, do a review on it. Imagine the amount of views you'd get on something like that. Right, we do have to find a winner. I don't know how, because I only counted about 3 or 4, but apparently we've had 7 entries to the water bottle thing. So let me do a draw. Here we go. Well, I can see now why it's 7. At some point, I must have typed the word 5 into the chat. So I screwed it up, but it doesn't matter because Andy Darvell has got himself an Air Up bottle. Mr. Darvell, congratulations. How very Darvelous for you. You probably need to remind me of your address. I'll drop you a line after the show to remind you, just in case you're not here anymore. But you've got yourself both the water bottle and the pods to go with it. So watch this space, my friend. If you haven't already done so, please send me your address. Dan says, let me get rid of this. I remember the days of the 3C. Nigel was top dog on a 3CX, and well done, Andy. Yeah, well done indeed. Fantastic. Good to see another one of those going out the door. We'll be doing it again on, where are we? Thursday. We're doing it again tomorrow. We're going to give another one away tomorrow. Andy will be out of the draw. Gary Muirhead will be out of the draw. But he's still here. So congratulations, Andy. I thought you may have gone back to work. But yes, you are the proud owner now of an air-up system. You'll be drinking your water with a gentle waft of peach. I'm just checking the flavours. I'm fairly sure one was peach. Yes, cola is one, peach is another, and watermelon. You'll be hydrated with a gentle waft under your hooter, which is fantastic news. Jim Turner says, I cut my teeth on a very worn-out, long-eaten plant, 3CXs. When you can master those up against services and buildings, you can operate anything. Here, Mr. Turner. Listen, I welcome many of the developments in this industry. I do largely think that machines have got better, faster, cleaner, more reliable, safer. I do agree with all of that. But I still believe we've been a little bit hasty with pushing backhoe loaders slightly to the edge. I think we've been too hasty. Dan says we're going to be calling you Peachy, Andy. Well, listen, I'm sure he'd answer to it because he now owns an air-up bottle. I say he now owns, he will in the next couple of days once I get to the post office. Andy, if you haven't done so already, please remind me of your address. I'll get that in the post for you today. Listen, we've been going for an hour and a half. I'm going to see it through to the bitter end, and I'm going to do a morning monologue. If you do need to leave, please don't stick around. I can only apologise. That being said, the subject I want to talk about is something that is quite possibly impacting your health. So if you can stick around, please do so, and I'll be back after this. Let me very quickly address this question from Gary Muirhead. Has JCB slowed or stopped production of the 3CX? No. In actual fact, I mean, they now have various grades. They've got the 3CX Sightmaster, and they've got the Plus and the Pro. So you can have all the bells and whistles. I think the top speed of the Pro is 50 kilometers an hour on highway. I think the others are 40 or thereabouts. But yeah, no, the 3CX are still rolling out the door. Don't you worry about that. And Andy, he's going to send me his address. Good stuff. So, morning monologue time. Let's talk about dust. More specifically, let's examine the microscopic, invisible assassins hiding in our concrete, brick, engineered stone, and mortar. Respirable, crystalline silica. It's incredibly easy to brush off the abstract threat of a lung condition when the danger isn't swinging at your head like an excavator bucket. But the statistics surrounding occupational lung disease are terrifying. Every single year in the United Kingdom, approximately 12,000 people die from lung diseases definitively linked to past exposure at work. And just to be clear, that's not strictly demolition and construction, that's across industry. Compare that staggering number to the 111 fatal workplace accidents reported in a recent year, and a startling reality emerges. An astonishing 99% of deaths caused by work can be attributed to long-term ill health. Only 1% are due to poor safety. For those of you working in the demolition and construction sectors, the picture is even more alarming. A construction worker in the UK is 100 times more likely to die from an occupational disease than from a sudden workplace accident. Silica dust is a leading contributor to this grim statistic. Because the dust particles generated by cutting, grinding, and crushing are so incredibly fine, they easily bypass the body's natural respiratory defenses and embed themselves deep within lung tissue. Over the course of a career, or sometimes just a few short months of exposure, that invisible hazard silently destroys the respiratory system. Silicosis is the world's oldest known occupational disease, yet it remains one of the most persistent and devastating conditions in the modern trade. As the crystalline silica particles settle deep into the lungs, they cause severe inflammation. That gradually leads to areas of hardened and permanently scarred lung tissue known as fibrosis. Because scarred lung tissue can't function or expand properly, victims are left with a persistent cough, severe shortness of breath, and chronic debilitating fatigue. In advanced stages, sufferers eventually find simple, everyday activities like walking across the room or climbing the stairs completely exhausting. They may become largely confined to their beds as respiratory failure sets in. And beyond silicosis, inhaling this very fine dust is definitively linked to lung cancer and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And the damage doesn't stop at the lungs either. Extensive studies and epidemiological evidence have shown that heavy silica exposure significantly increases the risk of other life-threatening conditions, including heart failure, tuberculosis, arthritis, and even kidney disease. The current HSE crackdown and heightened enforcement were heavily prompted by the recent tragic deaths of 2 young workers from silicosis. This spurred the authorities into immediate and aggressive action. The primary target of the regulators' current outrage is the dry cutting of engineered stone. Engineered stone, which is incredibly popular for kitchen and bathroom worktops, can contain up to 95% crystalline silica. The HSE has declared the dry cutting of this material completely unacceptable and illegal. If you think the regulatory bodies are just issuing strongly worded memos and hoping for voluntary compliance, think again. The planned 1,000 plus site inspections are already well underway. They're heavily targeting fabricator sites, quarries, and construction zones to actively penalise non-compliance. Inspectors are deliberately hunting for businesses that cut corners. Under the control of substances hazardous to health regulations, employers have a strict, non-negotiable legal duty to assess risks and prevent or adequately control exposure to this deadly dust. In Great Britain, the workplace exposure limit for respirable crystalline silica is currently set at 0.1 milligrams per cubic metre, calculated as an 8-hour time weighted average. It's absolutely crucial to remember, though, that this numerical limit is an absolute legal maximum rather than a target to aim for. The overarching goal mandated by law must always be to reduce the exposure level as low as possibly, as low as reasonably practicable. In fact, many health and safety advocates, including the Unite Union, argue forcefully that the current British limit is still dangerously high. They regularly point out that in the United States, the established safety standard is exactly half of ours at 0.05 milligrams per cubic metre. Uniters strongly oppose the UK current standard. They highlight estimates that exposure precisely at the legal limit over 15 years still represents a 2.5% risk of developing silicosis. Consequently, relying purely on hitting the legal benchmark is a highly risky game, and true professionals should strive to engineer out the hazard completely. As if the direct threat to the worker wasn't enough to force a change in habits, there's a secondary danger that really gets the attention it deserves. Secondary silica exposure occurs when workers unknowingly carry hazardous dust home to their families. Silica particles are so incredibly fine that they easily cling to heavy work clothes, embed into skin and hair, and settle deeply into the fabric of work vans. Settle deeply into the fabric seats of a work van. When a demolition professional returns home without showering or immediately changing out of their contaminated gear, the invisible dust is released directly into the household environment. Over time, spouses, children, and elderly relatives breathing in the air in their own living rooms can develop the exact same progressive, fatal lung diseases as the workers themselves. The home offers no respiratory protective equipment and no heavy-duty extraction systems. This makes vulnerable family members sitting ducks for a hazard they never even signed up for. Personal injury and wrongful death lawsuits are already emerging rapidly in this space. Legal teams are targeting employers who fail to provide proper decontamination areas, locker rooms, or laundering services. The liability of failing to properly control dust now extends far beyond the perimeter fencing of the average site. The sheer volume of dust generated on our sites makes it dangerously easy to become completely desensitized to it. We see it every single day, coating our boots, our tools, and our heavy equipment. But the current regulatory climate has shifted rapidly and permanently, with inspectors openly declaring war on poor dust control and actively deploying to enforce the law. The financial, reputational, and legal risks of ignoring silica are mounting steeply. More importantly, the devastating cost of this highly preventable disease is simply too high to accept. No one enters the demolition or construction trades expecting an easy ride. It's physically demanding, difficult work that requires serious grit and technical expertise. However, demonstrating that professional toughness should not require sacrificing your lungs or inadvertently poisoning our families at the end of a shift. The dangers of dust. Just want to very, very quickly touch on this very, very quick point. If you are working with asbestos, you go through, it's done in an enclosure. You showered, your protective gear, showers, and to ensure that you don't take it out of the enclosure onto a bus, onto a train, onto a tube train, back home to your families. Those same rules do not apply to silica dust. And silica dust, as you've just heard, every bit as deadly. So if any of you are looking out the window of a machine at the moment, or out the window of a site office, and there's clouds of dust in the air, it's poison. It's not, we probably need a dust suppression system, or maybe tell the blokes to tie a t-shirt around their face, because I've seen that a few times. Just remember, deadly. And just to prove the point, and I haven't set him up for this. Dan has just said this. I stopped 3 men cutting curbs dry. The dust was unreal. No mask, no ear defenders. I gave him a reminder. See it all the time. And funnily enough, I tend to see it. I go on sites, and I know people often put on, break out the red carpet, Mark Anthony's here, and he'll report if he sees something horrible. I do get that there is a degree of that happens. So I tend to see sites at their best. I don't see it so much on sites, or certainly on the bigger sites. Where I do see it, when you've got somebody having an extension built and somebody's cutting worktops or whatever, they're out in the front garden, they've got the saw on it, the angle grinder, whatever it might be, great plumes of dust, t-shirt tied around their head, gasping for breath. See that all the time. 12,000 people a year die of occupational diseases. And of all of the deaths caused by work, just 1%, and this is not just demolition and construction, this is across all industries, just 1% is caused by accidents. The rest is by disease. And you think about all of the time that we spend listening to toolbox talks on the importance of hard hats and high vis and safety gloves and safety glasses and site boots and all of the stuff that I'm all for it. Harnesses, I'm all for it. Anything that you can use to make people safer. But if you imagine like the doomsday clock, if you imagine the safety of workers in the UK as a clock, if you could change, if you could eliminate accidents entirely, no more accidents, no more fatalities, all gone, you have moved the needle 1 second from midnight, because diseases like asbestosis, silicosis, and everything else take up the rest of the 24 hours. Gary says, I also remember seeing a documentary about the effects of dust had on people's health after the Twin Towers collapsed. It was shocking. Yeah. I remember reading that not long after, but I do remember it was something like a year after 9/11, because there would have been asbestos within the Twin Towers, but there would also have been PCBs or PCBs rather, and various other toxins as well. But I think it was a year or possibly even less that the fallout, let's say, the fallout from 9/11 had killed more people than the initial attack and the collapse of the Twin Towers. That's how deadly dust is. And you remember watching, I remember watching it unfold. You see all those people emerging from the dust cloud after one tower collapsed and the other tower collapsed. Remember watching it, these people emerging completely white, their clothes, their face, their hair, all completely white. How many of those survived the next 5 years, the next 10 years, because of dust inhalation? I wonder. Dan says there's a lot of companies don't have sufficient masks. See the picture I sent to the group when on Wimbledon, guys cutting next to door dry in a non-ventilated area. Yeah. And one of the other things, I'm a bad excuse for it because I'm sat here with a beard on. Jim, you'd fail as well. One of the key concerns is that if you're working with dust, you need a proper face fit mask. And if you have a face fit mask, you can't have a beard, you can't have stubble, because it will break part of that seal and you could still get the dust in. Not regulated anywhere near enough. There's more dust blowing off the yard than we make with the crushers. Now there's the rub. We end up with dust in the digger cabs because we use water when required for dust suppression. See, there's another thing. If you get into some areas where there is toxins in the air, you can get pressurized cabs or pressurized cab systems. I can't remember. There's a Dutch company that we did some work with back in the day, and they put a thing on the roof, a bit like the hydrogen tanks of the JCB 3CX hydrogen, put a pod on the roof, and it pressurizes a cab. So you work with the cab doors, windows, everything closed, and you're basically like in an airtight but fully ventilated environment. It keeps all the nasties, including dust, out of the cab and therefore out of your lungs. But it's like asbestos. Things have to be really bad, like there must be some kind of like anthrax in the air before somebody says, "Oh, we probably need a pressurized cab now." But average dust, which is every bit as harmful, we just carry on. You end up with damp footwear, and when it dries in the cab, it produces dust. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And listen, I mean, I know there was a lady, I wish I can remember her bloody name. There was a woman, a real big campaigner on all things related to asbestos. And she lost her husband to asbestosis or mesothelioma. And she herself had contracted it. Not because it's contagious, but because he used to come home from work and she would put his overalls in the washing machine. And while she was handling his overalls and his shirt and his jacket, she was breathing it as well. So he died, and then about 15 years later, it got her too. Mavis Nye was her name, NYE, Mavis Nye. She used to be quite a big deal over on Instagram. Lovely lady. And it got her, and she'd never worked with asbestos aside from washing her husband's clothing. I'm interested to see how this demo job is tomorrow for suppression. Let us know. Lots of firms enforcing everyone use helmet dust masks now. Do you know what? I've not seen a great deal of that. I've not seen a great deal of that. And the other thing, of course, we are, I've been talking quite a bit about hydration. We are about to enter the warmer part of the year. Who wants to be working with a dust mask all day? Particularly, the proper face fit ones, hot and sweaty. So even if they're provided, you'll see a lot of people wearing them as hats. Dan says, I often clean out cab filters and it's mad how bad it is. Yeah. But put a bit of compressed air through a system and see just what the dust looks like. Bloody awful. Gary, on the same subject, how many times have you put the heaters on in the cab and receive a mouthful of dust? Should always check and clean your cabin pollen filters, guys. Yeah. Last line of defense, really. It is a slow killer and people don't understand the actual long-term effects. And that's, I'm not saying anybody actually sits there and thinks this consciously. But if you were to inhale dust, God forbid, if you were to inhale a deadly bunch of dust today, it's not going to kill you today or tomorrow or next week or the week after, possibly not next year, possibly not 10 years after that. So when it does finally take hold and you do get fibrosis and you can't breathe and you can't walk up the stairs, and you could do with a bit of financial assistance because you can no longer work, who do you point the finger at? Can you sit there and say categorically that at 11:50 on the 14th of May 2026, you inhaled 2 mouthfuls of dust on a site just outside Wimbledon in South London? And if you were to, even if you suggested that, your former employer that you worked with 20 years ago is going to argue that you'd worked on 100 sites before that and you worked on 5,000 sites after that. No defense. So you're on your own with lung disease that will probably kill you. Dan says that's the first thing I do every machine, clean out the cab filters. Yeah, not a bad idea. Well, particularly given all that we've just heard. Enda O'Doherty has just joined us over on Instagram just as I'm about to walk out the door because bizarrely, I don't know why, we are almost at the 2-hour mark. I can but apologise. Dan, you've got to be typing very, very quickly because you've said, now, here's a question. I'm kind of waiting on you now, mate. You've got about 10 seconds before I call it, and you'll have to save your question for tomorrow. I'm not being unkind. I could do with a pee. I don't normally sit here for 2 hours. Has there been any companies prosecuted over this dust? That is the plan. Yes, I mean there was a company prosecuted. If you listen back to the spiel, 2 people were. It was a stone cutting company. 2 young guys, or relatively young guys, got lung disease, I think, as a result of inhalation. They were successfully prosecuted. That has triggered the HSE's crackdown. But I do think, it always needs somebody to set a precedent. It needs, and I don't want it to happen, but I think until a demolition company, a construction company, a retrofit company, until they are actually prosecuted, everyone seems to take the attitude of, we'll be fine. What's the worst that can happen? They can't prove it was us. It could have been any site that somebody's been on. Until we actually start getting active and big money prosecutions of people. Yeah. And Dan says, yeah, the year's too late. Exactly the same as mesothelioma. You're talking about people dying 20 years hence, 25 years hence, 30 years hence. Who do you blame for that over a lifetime of exposure? Gary said, did you see my comment? We've got a new system here, actually. And if I've highlighted a comment, it goes dull. I have no current ones from you, Gary. Let me go back. I did do that one, if that's what you're talking about. How many times you put the heaters on in the cab and got a mouthful of dust? I did do that one. And that one as well. Yeah, I think I've got you covered. If not, comment again, Gary, and we'll deal with it tomorrow because these things don't go away. There is a crackdown going on with the health and safety executive now. Don't be too surprised if you see a guy with a clipboard walking onto. Oh no, it's about our site. Hang on a minute, let's have a look. Long way back here. Gary, I'm not seeing it. Just talk amongst yourselves. I'm reading back. I can't see it at all, mate. Can't see it at all. Drop it in the chat. I'll deal with it tomorrow because I'm upset enough about having probably lost a camera. I'd be even more upset if I wet myself. So everybody, go and have a fantastic day. If there is any dust around, avoid at all costs. And I shall see you on the morrow. yeah, keep your fingers crossed for my camera, would you? And I'll keep you up to speed when I hear back from JCB. Till then, see you soon.